when we have this experience where we are gripped by an interest and we think this might be the one, we get excited, we get enthusiastic, we go all in, thinking to ourselves, this might be it. And over a couple of months, that interest might begin to fade away. And we think to ourselves, damn, I thought that was it. Leaving us in the state of demoralization, depression, a thought that, oh, maybe everyone's right. Maybe I do have to select one thing and do it without any excitement. Now, this conclusion isn't correct, but there are reasons as to why nothing sticks. And in this video, I want to explain 4 of those reasons. Now, my name is Joel Yulee. I'm a philosopher. I am deeply obsessed with vocation, our sacred calling in the world, career paths, understanding what it is that we're meant for in this lifetime. And it's why I educate people on YouTube, Substack, podcast. It's why I have a community that shows people how to choose the right career path with conviction. Because it is my belief that every single person, including you watching, has a calling. And it's just a matter of bringing this to attention and then navigating it in the modern world. Now, there are different reasons as to why nothing sticks, why you have different interests that don't give you a clear path. So here's the first reason I want to share with you. The first reason is that we are afraid of our progressive nature. Now, culture presents us with a way of being in the world. And this way of being pushes for a singular self-expression that isn't fully coherent with your inner world. You'll see this in statements like, you need to niche down. You'll see this in the push to select a singular major in university. You'll see this in parents pushing to select a job. And this viewpoint to place yourself into a singular mode of expression is consensus. It is convention. It is a traditional career. But if you are interested in many different things, what that means is that you have a natural progressiveness in you. Tradition isn't going to hold you. The role of creatives and people that are curious is to progress culture forward, to go against the natural vein of tradition. Now, you might not want to be starting a rebellion, a revolution, a contrast to those around you, but bending to the will of convention means that you are decaying your inner landscape, the interior of who you are as an individual. Which means that if you don't accept that you have multiple different interests which inform you and that you're different, then you end up missing out on a life that you're meant to lead. You end up not pursuing your path. And so, fearing going against the norm, or the solution to this, is a radical self-acceptance. Meaning that you, as someone that has many different interests, need to accept that you have many different interests. And that to contort yourself into an expression that only allows for one of those interests is anti how you're meant to unfold in this lifetime. And so culture will push this, hey, you need to be like us. And yet the work that you're meant to be doing needs you to be like you. And accepting this progressive nature of yours is paramount. It's paramount to your vocation. So when something doesn't stick, it means that you haven't gone underneath those different interests and you don't know how they work together. You might not even be thinking about them working together. And instead, you might be trying to select them into a traditional path. An example of this is someone that is into painting, digital art, and yoga, and they're trying to select, should I be an illustrator or a yoga instructor or a full-time artist? Rather than going underneath the interests, understanding the components of those interests, they're trying to fit themselves into a form of singularity. And this doesn't work. Your different interests, when they're connected to your vocation, will come back and disrupt you and ask you to be integrated. That's why it's not sticking. A second reason why your interests don't stick is because you are getting partial alignment rather than total alignment. Meaning that there are particular paths, interests, passions that activate components within you that suggest this is the path. And so this is why people will pursue their interests. They'll go along, focus on it, only for it to fade away. And they realize that it fades away, but they don't know why. And this is because the selected interest partially overlaps with this archetype of your calling, what I call the career archetype. So what this can look like is, say, for example, you're really into tarot reading. You've seen that path out in the world. You flip cards yourself. You think to yourself, maybe that's the path. And so you start to pursue that path, only to realize that's not quite it. So what's going on there? Well, maybe your path has to do with symbolism. Maybe your path has to do with esotericism. Maybe your path has to do with a communication with forces outside the known. And what this path of tarot reader is doing is it is giving form to a little bit of the actual path. It's overlapping with what you're meant to do, but it isn't what you're actually meant to do. And so people that go out into the world and seek their paths will often fall for partial alignment. They will fall for what I call is a temptation path, a path that isn't the real thing, but it activates a little bit of the true path. And so therefore, they veer off into something that they're not meant to be doing. And if you think back to your very first high school crush, and you may have associated that crush, that feeling, as love. You may have even thought your first boyfriend or girlfriend was the person that you were going to spend the rest of your life with. And yet, when that didn't go well, when that didn't work out, later on, you end up falling in love with the person that you're meant to be with, giving you a true understanding of what love is. But you couldn't have known in the beginning, and so you don't have a reference point for it. And this is the same as coming into connection with your calling. People have partial alignment. They think this is it, but it's not. And I've termed this idea, when we think it is it, only for it to fade away, as a phantom vocation. And when this happens, once again, it is a call to go deeper, to get underneath everything. Now, the third reason is that you believe you have to choose one thing. And this is everywhere in culture. But I want to zoom in on this belief, especially around this idea of niching down. So this is a belief that you might have heard in the sphere of online entrepreneurship, the coaching industry, where you have to niche down. This isn't true. This idea of niching comes from a Darwinian evolutionary perspective. It's entrenched in this worldview. And this isn't a good way to view your path. But even through the lens of evolution, niching down still isn't a good idea. If we think about the cross-pollination of ecosystems, the most vitality and life exists between ecosystems. If we think of animals surviving, it's not about niching down, it's about adaptability. And if we think about specialization out in nature, it's the animals that specialize that are most likely to go extinct, especially when the conditions of the environment change. And so even through the lens of evolution, where this idea of niching comes from, it still tells us that this isn't the best strategy for our path. And so to try to contort ourselves, distort ourselves, place ourselves into this form of singular expression, which doesn't show us the vitality and uniqueness and inner life of our vocation, is a mistake. It's to reject our naturalness and what we can become in the world, meaning that the coherence of all your different interests and passions and loves is far superior than the pursuit of singularity, evolutionarily speaking. And so it's not sticking because that viewpoint not only goes against your nature, but you likely already have a feeling or an intuition that this isn't the correct way to pursue the path. And it's about reconnecting with yourself in such a way where you begin to embrace and trust that side of yourself. And the fourth reason is that we can be worried about the limitations of the chosen interest. Meaning that if we see our path as a selected interest, we can start to think to ourselves, oh, that means I don't get to pursue any of these other things, and that sounds horrible. But the interesting thing is that commitment is required, but not in the way that culture pushes it forward, not in the way that it's expressed, not in the way that they tell you to niche down. It's very different. If you're to think of a movie, think of the story. Think of the different characters with different drives, different motivations, different stories, backgrounds, connections, relationships. Think about how the story might potentially unfold. There might be one character, and it goes along, and it climaxes, and then goes to another character. We start to watch that character, it goes along, climaxes, and we go back to the first character. What's interesting about this is that if we were to say, I only want you to choose one character, one story, and to take out all the other characters, suddenly we look at this and think, oh, that kind of feels wrong. It's not going to be very interesting. It's not going to be a very good movie. Sure, I suppose it could be done. But why do we even want to do that? And I bring this up to show that we are often focused on selecting and choosing the wrong things. Focusing on choosing an interest, a niche, is the wrong point of view. Instead, we can look at this as how do all of these characters, interests, work together? How do we find coherence? Which changes the question. And the question is, how much screen time should each character get? And how will that affect the entire story? It's a very different way of viewing things. And so most people are trying to understand how to choose the right character rather than trying to understand what's best for the story. And if you're hearing this and thinking to yourself, oh, I have many different interests, then it's about making these interests work together in unity. You know, it's funny. I have many different interests, but a lot of people will say to me, well, it looks like you're very focused on one thing. And both are true. I have many different interests, and I'm focused on one thing. Because my many different interests are coherent in such a way that it allows me to focus on one thing. And so commitment to that one thing could only be done for me so long as my interests were woven into the fabric of my path. Otherwise, I would feel fractured, disorientated, constantly pursuing interests only to find them fading away. Walking a path that is a phantom vocation, and it wouldn't allow me to pursue my calling. And so if one of your interests isn't sticking, it's a call for further reflection. Where does this interest fit within the path? Is the interest as it's constructed in the way that you're seeing it going to be able to give you the life that you're meant to be leading? Or do you need to break that interest down and get at the essence of the components of that interest? Oftentimes, it's breaking it down, finding out what it's made of. I will use interests such as Jungian psychology, biography, astrology, and these are woven into my path. I'm not trying to choose as to whether or not I am going to be an astrologer, a biographer, a Jungian analyst, because I already know the very core foundation of the path that resides beneath this energy that I call the career archetype, which helps you to choose the right career path with conviction, deep sense of this is what I'm meant to be doing. And so all of these reasons as to why your interests don't stick call for a deeper understanding of self, an understanding of the culture that you're in, and a call for radical self-acceptance. Because if you were born in a period where multiple interests were revered, the winds would be at your back. It would be much easier to walk a path that allowed for your multiple interests. But you're not. So therefore, you have to radically self-accept that you have multiple different interests, and then pursue them, because your vocation is more important than what culture is telling you is true, and is a better marker for truth, for a good life, for what I call an exalted form, meaning the person that you're meant to become requires you to transcend these poor, bad, and often ill-constructed beliefs that are thrust on you to make you feel like you're meant to do it another way, when that's just not true. And if you're interested in learning more about how I help people to choose the right path with conviction, then I'll leave a link below. That link will take you to a landing page that will inform you on exactly how I help people how to know their path. How people that have been searching for their purpose for their entire lives can learn their path in 8 weeks. I give you lenses and perspectives that give you insight into who you are, what you're meant to do, in a way that no one has ever given you before. We use lenses such as Jungian psychology, psychological hurdles, becoming barriers, action therapy, astrology, biography, decoding of your interests, looking at your life mythology, understanding the way in which the world sees you through social feedback, all to bring you an awareness of what career path is meant for you, which path are you meant to choose. And we do that by unearthing your career archetype. We do that by showing you how, when you unearth your career archetype, how do you walk the steps in the world? How do you make money? How do you pursue a life that you are actually going to love? Is this possible? And if it is possible, how do I make what's up here in my mind, in my dreams, in my fantasy, real? And so if you want to know which path to choose, click the link below.